Hey everybody, I'm Tarl with Fixated Real Estate, and welcome once again to another episode of Analyzing Deals Like a Pro. Today, I'm going to show you the biggest learning lesson of my entire investment career. But first, I want you to check this out. Look at that money. $231,000 on this settlement statement. What if you received that check for $231,000 for selling one property? How would that make you feel? What kind of excitement would you have? Would you be excited? Would you change your life? Would you change your business? Would you do nothing different? Or would you be upset? Well, I can tell you right now, look at this property here. This property was a massive transformation. We spent nearly $300,000 on renovations on this project on almost 2 years of time, energy, and effort. And at the end of those 2 years, we netted actually negative $5,000 on doing a project that took a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of sweat, tears, sleepless nights, frustrations, overhead, people, expenses, all those great things that happen on any one project that goes wrong. Yet our settlement still says that we made $231,000. So be careful when you listen to those gurus, those people on TikTok that are showing you settlement statements, checks that they're cashing, and so forth. That might not be the actual net profit that they make on a deal. Why, you ask? I'm going to get into that in this property analysis for you guys here in a moment. So I'm going to go over with you guys how this 4-bedroom, 3-bath, 3,200 square foot house put me into check, and it had the greatest learning lessons of my entire investment career. How this one property, this negative $5,000 property over 2 years, changed everything we did in our business. It made us who we are today. It made it to where we can live the lifestyle we live and invest the way that we invest. I'm going to show you, of course, how we acquired this property and how we failed to analyze this property due to one thing, and that thing is called ego. And ego is the enemy, and this property showed me why that is. We're also going to go over all the normal stuff we normally do, the rehab, the numbers, the pictures, the before and afters, all the issues we kind of go through these properties, the learning lessons and so forth, plus also some awesome pro tips. And last but not least, how just because losing $5,000 is not really all you lose on a deal. When you lose money on a deal, you also lose all the opportunity cost, the time, the energy, the mental status that you have, everything involved with that. And I'm going to go over in details on how you can learn not from the hard way like I did. I hope by the end of this video, I give you guys some key tips, some key pro tips, some lessons, some things you could take with you to be able to better your investment career and not have to go spend 2 years on a project, waste 300 grand and a lot of sleepless nights, and learn it the hard way that I did. I'm here to teach you guys all my mistakes, and hopefully you take them from this video right now. All right, so like any great story, let's start at the beginning. This property was brought to us in 2016. It was an estate sale, and we were able to acquire it for $455,000 from a realtor friend of ours that had been working with the state for some time. Now, this property came with a couple of bags and issues with it and so forth. It had a bad septic, it had a bad well, and we were able to negotiate with the seller that they would replace the septic and the well. Now, why do I bring that up? Because we did get a brand new septic and well. Those two things really intrigued us on this property. We're like, sweet, the most complicated, the most expensive part of this entire property is going to be brand new and taken care of by the seller. One less issue for us. We could totally take on this project. Now, this project was a 5-bedroom, 2-bath property, 3,200 square feet on 4.5 acres. 4.5 beautiful acres in an area called Tiger Mountain, just outside of Seattle, Washington, about 30 minutes outside. It's actually where my primary residence is, even though I live in Maui right now. So great location, great property, mostly flat. Really liked it a lot. So we had a lot of excitement for this property. Now, during this time period, we had roughly about 20 other projects going on, and we've done a couple hundred deals by then. So we were kicking butt and taking names. So we thought, why not? We've never done a project this size. Now you can see from the before and after screenshot of the before and after the front of the house, it's a massive transformation. 4.5 acre property, 3,200 square foot home that has never been remodeled since the 1950s when it was built. And a lot of work needed to be done. And some really key things to the exterior of this area, the landscape itself, which ended up being a massive, massive issue for us, which I'm going to show you some photos in a minute. So we acquired it for $455,000. And because our egos were so strong at that time, we looked at this thing going like, oh yeah, we could take care of this. No big deal. No, we don't really need to do an inspection. It's just in this case, a split level home. We've done tons of split level homes. We definitely need to take care of a few things. We don't need to worry. That might be an issue later, right? Let's go ahead and take this project on. Let's budget $165,000 on this project. So that was the budget because we figured we're good enough to get it done. And because of permitting and so forth, we decided we'll budget 8 months. Now, why 8 months? Permits take a long time in this neck of the woods. And we thought that it might sell for close to about $800,000 when we were done with it. So not the biggest margin in the world for a deal this size, but we didn't think it's going to be that big of a deal. So why not? Let's throw it into the pile of properties that we were already used to doing. By this time, we'd already done hundreds of properties, and we thought we were kicking butt and taking names. So we can continue to go on and do a bigger project. Why not add it to the list? We had a rough almost 20 projects going on at that time too. And because this had a little bit longer closing time because of the septic and well issue, we figured let's go ahead and tie it up and let's go ahead and do this deal. Now, once we tied it up and got into the deal, I totally forgot about it. Months go by. We could have easily during that time period done more investigation on the property. At that time, we could have been doing our deal analysis in more depth. We could have been getting permits ready, setting up plans, all those great things that many savvy investors do to this day when they have long extended closes. Now, one of the first pro tips that I want to give you that I'm going to expand on later is know your capacity. How much can you actually take on? In this particular moment in my life in 2016, we had plenty of staff. We had a lot of deals going on. We had a lot of money out there right now, or at that time, that we thought this one's in the bag. We'll think about it later. Well, we never thought about it later. So know your capacity, know your limits on how many deals you can actually do. And at this time, this was not a deal we should have taken on due to our capacity restraints. So let me show you this beautiful house. There we are. So that's the back of my head. That's when I was a little bit skinnier. I'm still kind of skinny now, not as skinny as Brandon Turner, but a little bit skinnier. I didn't gain more weight like I did when I started. I was very stressed back then, actually. So lots of work. So I didn't eat as much as I should have. But I was also had full of hopes and dreams. And you can't tell because you're not seeing my face, but I was looking at that thing like I'm going to take it down. Well, it took me down. So big property, just a split level home, pretty ugly on the outside, but nothing special as far as we're concerned. That's the road that comes into it. Plenty of land. There was a nice garden area on the side. This is the back where they were already starting to do some of the septic work. They were digging it out. All of this was massively overgrown landscaping. There's a lot of it. This was an old well. So this was a hand dug well. This is very important to note on this property because this becomes a major issue in the property later. The King County Health Department said you can't have that hand dug well if you're going to put in a brand new septic right next to it. So they made them decommission this entire well. And I'm going to show you what happened because they decommissioned this hand dug well later, partway through the project that created massive issues for us later. That's the back of the house. It had a nice little patio. You can see nothing's been going on with it a while. Very well overgrown. Now, this property had so many outbuildings. This was where they used to grow bunnies, right? There was a bunny coop in the back that was pretty run down. There's massive amount of outbuildings throughout this entire property, wood everywhere, a Budweiser truck. We didn't realize this, but even though this property had been owned by the same family for the entire, since it was built, they built the property. They also used it as a place where they just dumped whatever the hell they didn't want also throughout the property as well. So we got to a point on this property where we just kept digging up stuff and more stuff kept being found. So at some point, you get to a point where like, wow, maybe we shouldn't keep digging. But we had to because once we knew about it, we had to get rid of it. So a tremendous amount of trash out fees, debris fees, things we didn't expect we were going to be spending quite as much money on. This was a addition, an ADU that was a complete hack job. And I cannot express how messed up this ADU was, but we didn't really get into this ADU because we couldn't get access to it at the time when we decided to buy the property. But this thing pretty much needed to be teared down once we bought the property. We cut it in half later, actually, just to be able to salvage it as best as we could. Here's part of the outbuildings as well. There's me wondering what I'm getting myself into. And when you get into the property, it was just a very dated split level home, nothing special at all. So for us, we'd done tons of these at this time. Maybe not so big because most of the properties we did were 2,000 square feet or less, but this 3,200 square foot house was nothing to us. We thought we could totally take it on. We're going to rip it all out, gut it out, and start over. But at the end of the day, a split level is not that complicated. There was a key thing to this property, though, that I'm going to show you guys later as well about the roof structure. So you can see the basement, all dated, nothing special, cool little fireplace that we got rid of. And now you have all these beautiful trees. This is one thing we didn't really appreciate more of that was probably a huge selling point of the property. you had all these redwood trees that were just very well put together out there. They weren't taken care of by limbing or anything like that. They were very well overgrown, but they were beautiful. It was a very beautiful property, which is why we probably all got attracted to it as a team to want to take it on. Yet, unbeknownst to us, that property had some hidden dangers in it that we're definitely going to show you. So in the ADU that was here, pretty run down when we finally got access to it. This is not the before photos before we bought it. This is after we bought it. You cannot tell, but there's no foundation in this thing. This thing is sunk. This thing's wacky all over the place. One whole half of it was completely just, there was a cesspool, literal cesspool underneath this thing that was sinking the entire ADU in the back in this area here, which kind of sucks because it was a nice little area. We ended up having to tear off the entire back of this entire ADU, 50% of this ADU at the end of the project, and then decommission the cesspool that was underneath it and do our best to save this structure and just turn it into an office space. But we also wondered what they were doing in this back room here as well. Who knows what they were doing with all those chains and so forth. So now that you've seen this, right, we budgeted $165,000 for that. Now, some of you guys might be looking at it right away going like, wow, you were dumb right away just to budget $165,000. Well, we were only looking at the house. We were spending we were thinking maybe 10 grand to clean up the landscaping and so forth, make it look pretty. But we were not thinking how much more money it was going to cost us from all the issues from the actual 4.5 acres itself, and all the issues that came up on the property due to mismanagement on our end of the spectrum. But before we get into those problems, let me show you guys what this floor plan looked like. And this is something I encourage you guys all to do on these properties, is definitely go ahead and start draw up floor plans. Even if it's a big remodel like this, you kind of have to do a floor plan because you need to be able to pull permits. All right, so here's a basic look of the actual floor plan for the main floor on this property before we went to go remodel it. You'll see that there is 2 bedrooms on the right. There's the stairs up and down here in the center area, which is a split level. Split levels just mean when you walk into the front door, you have to make a choice. You have to go up or you have to go down. And that's sometimes too many choices for people, which is why we had to value this property a little bit less when we first analyzed it, because people don't like choices. They'd rather just go into the house and not have to choose going up and down. But you got 2 bedrooms on the right, and you also have on the left, of course, you got the dining room, kitchen. Everything's back in the 60s, 50s, 70s, 80s, like all that great stuff. And below and before that, people liked compartmentalized areas of the house. Right nowadays, we all like open spaces for some reason. And so our first thing and instinct is, how do we open up all the space to be able to add value to these properties, especially a property that we're trying to sell for 800 grand at that time. So we wanted to be able to add value, make it a wow factor. And so we wanted to be able to open up this kitchen, this whole fireplace area. So there's this big, huge fireplace in the center of the house as well that went all the way down to the basement. So how do we open this up to where we get a kitchen plan, have a big living room area, but not compromise this fireplace because we wanted to be able to keep it? So this entire building here had a lot of load on it. This was originally a torch down roof house, a flat roofed property that we didn't realize when we first bought the property. And I'll show you guys a picture here in a second. But basically, they took this torch down house, this torch down roof, flat roof, and they built another roof on top of it, which is why we thought it was a pitched roof, a peaked roof. But in reality, it was a torch down where they just built a floating roof on top so they can get snow loads off of it, because it snows here every now and then in that area. So because of that, when you have a flat roof, there's a lot of loads. So a lot of these walls in here, a lot of these internal walls were carrying loads from the joists that were running up and down the house. So this wall here, these walls here, all of these walls were all load-bearing walls, and they carried all the way down to the basement. So we were like, why not? We didn't budget this, but why not, to be able to open up everything and get rid of this torch down roof that we didn't realize was there? Why not rip the whole thing off and put some engineered trusses in it? And if we're going to put some engineered trusses in it, let's get crazy and let's go ahead and put scissor trusses, which I'll show you those, in this side of the house over here, and make it a vaulted ceiling area. And then we can put regular trusses on this side. Now, if we put scissor trusses on this side of the house, which I thought I was a genius for, then we would have no loads on the interior of the house of this area, and we could rip out all the walls and do whatever we want, because all the loads would then be on the exterior of the walls. So here's the after floor plan. Anything with the dotted line are walls that used to be there. So that's how our architect likes to do this one. And anything with the dark line on it is new walls that we're framing in. So you can see we rip out all the old walls that were in this whole area, and you get this kitchen, this L-shaped kitchen with a massive island in it, with this big, huge fireplace, with a great room, dining, entertainment area. Very awesome entertainment house. We kept this bathroom over here the same, and we converted a master bedroom here. And we had in the old floor plan, this was all closet space. So that was one of the first things I noticed, was we had a lot of dead space with closets here. So why not take all that space, put a new closet in the bedroom over here, and then turn this into a master bath walk-in closet, which turned out really, really nice. And I'm going to show you guys that photo at the end. So we thought we were geniuses for this. And we also had these little Euro decks that we put here just for permanent purposes later. And we'll show you the massive deck we ended up building. So scissor trusses, check. Get rid of the entire roof structure, check. Add to the budget. No, we thought we could still do it on budget. In the basement, very chopped up area. There's 3 bedrooms. We didn't need 5 bedrooms in this house. We only needed 4. 5 bedrooms was typically overkill for a lot of places. So we just needed 4 bedrooms instead. It had a kitchenette ADU style in here, which was very badly done because it was so old. And of course, the bathroom and bonus room area. So we thought, why not? Let's figure out a way to get bedrooms on this side. Maybe we can convert this into a den and turn that into a utility area. And this is another living space. But some of these spots were loads. This whole area right here was kind of a load area that became an issue. We had to put a beam in this area. But this is where this type of property here, I gave this pro tip before in past videos. Always hire professionals, especially for stuff like this. You get to a point in this career where maybe you can do some of this stuff in-house. But even today on a property like this, I would need a licensed bonded architect, maybe even some engineers that know how to do this property correctly. So don't try to wing this. Don't just start ripping out walls on properties of this size and scale. Pay the money for a good architect. The better ones, even though they cost a little bit of money, know what they're doing, and they're going to save you time, energy, and effort on the back end when it comes to your actual plan set. If you have a great plan set with the great materials that are affordable, and you don't have an architect that just lets their creativity fly and not give a crap at all about budgets, that's a bad one for you in this business. But if you get a good architect that might cost a little bit, but they are very conscious of the materials being used, the pricing that you're going to need, how many iterations you're going to have to rechange these plans, they're very conscious of that. Those are the ones you want the most. So on this particular plan set, did we get that architect? No, we got a budget one that didn't cost that much, which was great. But we had to do a lot of changes ourselves later on the plan set. And I wish we would have paid a little bit more for an architect. So basement on the after photos, you can see here, we changed things around. We basically got rid of the 3 bedrooms on this right side, turned it into nice, good sized bedrooms instead of 3 tiny bedrooms, usable bedrooms. Reconfigured the bathroom here to be a bit better, got rid of the kitchen and just made that an office den that looks out to the front. Storage, utilities, lots of storage space and utility space, and a nice big bonus room that goes out to the backyard. Now, let's get into the fun stuff. So there's the property once again. We had to do something to change this entire front of this project here and give it a good facelift. So spend some time with a designer, especially when you're trying to get $1 million property. Spend some time with a designer to be able to help you design these properties, get the right finishes. This is not a property you're going to live in, hopefully. So unless you do something really wrong or you love the property. So you're going to have to do some things to be able to appeal to the masses in that area. Look at comparables, comps, properties that are of like kind, the properties that you're getting those comps from to be able to sell this property for whatever you're trying to sell it for. Get your realtor on board so you know what level of finishes you need to do. We knew we needed to do high-end finishes for this property. So we needed to change the face, which was a little bit challenging for us in the beginning. We needed to change the landscaping. We needed to change a lot of things. But let me show you all the stuff that went wrong. First, here's some cool stuff. This is what it looked like when you rip off the top of the house, and you can see that this is the torch down roof below. This was that floating roof that they had built on top, and you can see this is all once a flat roof on the property. They're tearing it off right there. Big old chimney right in the center of the house that stuck out pretty freaking high, and all sorts of mess. This big, huge pile of dirt right here is from the well that we'll get into in a moment. That's what it looked like inside once we started ripping it all out. I'm so happy we got these photos. Always take photos. You can show cool PowerPoints later because of them. Everything's coming in. We didn't care about the water intrusion because we're ripping all the sheetrock off anyways. We just cut open this whole thing. These are their scissor truss. Now, here's what a scissor truss looks like. I don't know why it's a scissor, but it allows for the vaulted ceiling. So all the load starts to go on these outside points right here on the actual truss itself. So that way, in this case, you have a vaulted area, the scissor itself, the peak. so that you could put out. Now, we decided to do a 50-50 on this house. We put 50% of the house scissor truss on the left side of the house, and we put 50% on the right side, normal engineered trusses, just to save some costs, some money, and issues. Because the right side didn't have to be non-load bearing trusses. Those could be load bearing trusses, no big deal. But the right side, we wanted to be non-load bearing, full on load on the exterior wall, so we can have that bolted ceiling. Look, so we saved a little bit of money there to do that. But that's what it's coming in. That's what it looks like. It gets all roofed up. Everything's going according to plan. Everything's looking good. It's getting roofed. It's getting waterproofed. Woohoo! It's all dried in. And I can't tell you how cool it was to walk into this property at that moment. Look at those trusses. Look at that vaulted ceiling. See the electricals all getting in there, all nice and neat. Very excited about that. Oh, it's getting framed as well. The floor plan's coming together. Everything's going right. Wrong. Not everything's going right. So at this time, this is a septic system, brand new septic system that was installed. But you can see here, despite all the other things going on in the property, this thing is not covered yet. Why is it not covered? It's not covered because in the state of Washington, and in King County specifically, you need 2 weeks of dry weather when you have a brand new septic system get in. There's a few exceptions here and there. 2 weeks of dry weather with no water coming in to be able to show that this septic is not leaking. Well, it rains a lot, and in this particular time of year, we owned this property for 6 months, 6 straight months. That's right, 6 straight months where it rained at least some point over a 2-week period, and we could not get this thing covered at all. It just sat there, and it got to a point to where we're like, this really sucks. So we couldn't do anything to the landscape, and we didn't realize all the issues we were having with the landscape because it was uncovered for so long with all the water issues that were happening. Another thing that went wrong on this property is this. Now, to the right here, you'll see this was the hand dug well that I pointed out to you earlier in the video. This was the shed that was part of that for the hand dug well that we later turned into storage. When they closed that off, when King County came in, they poured it with cement, they condemned it, everything. That had an underground stream underneath it. And when they closed that off, the underground stream did a hydrostatic pressure and came up. That's why you see all this water here. We thought that this water was from all the rain over time that was just happening during that time of year. We just thought it was just that way. Wrong. When we look back at past photos, when this property, when we looked to tie it up when it was still in the winter, it was not this wet. It was never this wet. And it took us a while to realize that something's very wrong here, and this water is never going away. It's also why the septic was always full of water all the time in that area, because the septic was just over here. So the well got shut down by the county, yet when they shut it down, the pressure that was built up from that underground stream decided to go up, not just continue to go in through the aquifer there. It went up and created a lot of issues for us in this project that we didn't catch till later, and we didn't know how to solve. So basically, this house now became a swamp. As you can tell, here's that muddy mess. Once we finally got the septic covered, yet we still have this massive amount of water that's being puddled up over here. This is the back of the house. The septic gets covered. We're happy about it, but we're like, man, this is really ugly back here. Like, how do we solve this? And why is it so muddy? And why is everything so sticky? And it's all clay-like. We didn't know what to do. You can see that it's just like, it basically creates this whole stream. We dug out a little ditch to try to convert the water to go to another part of the property. And it's at that point, we saw that water was just slowly pouring out on this side of the property where the old well was. So we had to put some perf pipe in there and redirect the water to another little stream that was not that far from there. So that way we can get the water to go back to where it needed to go. But that took us a lot of time. We had to work with some engineers, some landscape engineers, and or not engineers, but landscape people, and also some engineers to figure out geotechs. I think that's what they're called. Anyways, to figure out what to do, how to revert the water, how to get it to the right spot, because it was becoming a major issue that later became a bigger issue for us inside the property itself. So you can see at this point, this is before we even put the roof in, that you can see all the debris that was piling up in this property. So this is what it looked like towards the end of it. We had to put all this drainage throughout the back of the property, and this is the front of the property, and dig it throughout. We had to divert tons of water that was in that area to be able to start drying this place out, so that way it stayed away from the house and get it to another spot where the water belonged. We also had to tear off, this is the ADU, this is that ADU here that we said, we had to rip it off, and this was all a cesspool, all built in here that was sunken down. We had to get that condemned and then recovered as well. And that was becoming also another bigger issue that we didn't realize. But we were able to save part of the ADU because of that and just convert that into an office. Another thing, we had all these outbuildings everywhere, and our demo guys decided that it'd be cool to start burning some of this stuff to be able to save costs on their end for debris. Now, we didn't know they were doing that at that time until we show up to the property and we see this and we get them to put it out. Well, later they started the fires back up again, and you see that big, huge pile right behind this one fire. Well, that pile of fire, that pile of wood caught on fire because they didn't put it out in the middle of the night. And throughout, and the next morning, one of the neighbors was walking down to our property because they like to walk their dogs there because nobody was living there. And the entire back part of this property was on fire due to this massive wood. This is Tiger Mountain. There's a lot of rich houses around here. And all we could imagine were us being on the evening news because some, greedy house flipper set the entire forest on fire. This pissed us off to no end. This actually was one of the catalysts that led to us firing a lot of people later down the line. Big lessons learned on that, on this fire here. Fire department was there. They were very pissed off at us. No fault of their own. They should be pissed off at us for what happened on this. But watch who you hire. Don't always go with the cheapest guys. That's for sure. We also ended up with some of our people when we weren't checking on our properties that some of our demo guys decided to be great to start living at the property. We never went to the back ADU unit too often, and we just were realizing, wait, these guys are here all the time taking their sweet ass time. Well, they were living actually at the property the whole time, and we stopped catching it. So we didn't pay attention to it as much. They loved the summer weather apparently at this property, and they decided to build themselves a little home in the ADU that was sinking into the cesspool. Another great issue to point out to you guys here is that this is the scissor trusses when we were getting them inspected by the city of King County, or by King County. This whole scissor truss gets installed completely on this project, and you have to have a 2-inch fire break around this this fireplace here. Well, we had a 1-inch fire break. Now, when you install and get engineered trusses put into a property, they're designed for very specific measurements. So this fit to be exactly perfect and engineered to be perfect at this point. So this set us back about 3-4 weeks to get something re-engineered, get guys back out there to be able to solve and basically pull back the trusses all around it by 1 inch. So 1 inch of a mistake made a 3 to 4 week difference in timeline and a bunch of headache and hassle, and a lot of people pointing fingers at each other as well. So I'm already just dumping stuff on you guys right now about this property. How many things have gone right? Not a lot. I thought a lot of things were going right in the beginning, but a lot of things were going wrong. I forgot to mention that we sat on this property for a few months before we got permits. It took us about 5 months to get permits on this project. So for 5 months, the whole house was sitting there after we bought it. So we had almost a 5-6 month close time. We did nothing with the project when it sat in escrow. Mistake number one, we could have been prepping things and getting plans and permits ready then. And mistake number two, after we bought the project, we get our plan set, we get our permits in, and we leave it with the King County, and we left the property and stopped working on it or even planning it out because we're like, why? We're going to wait till the permits show up. So don't see it. Don't think about it. It just sat there. So we almost let 11 months go by from tying it up on the property to when we actually got permits of work we could have done on this house the whole time to save money and save time. So back to this front yard here. So the front yard, you can see we dug out. This is actually where the well was, right? And the well had to be replaced. So there's a new water line that went into it and so forth. But when we started digging this thing out, we started realizing, man, there's a lot of water up here. Now I brought up water earlier. Well, we had to dig out this entire area here to be able to put in a bunch of perv pipe because this entire area, all the water that came from all the other properties uphill came down here and went downhill. So we had to build a brand new gravel road that we weren't planning on doing and put a culvert all throughout this side of the road up here, and then also put perv pipe throughout the landscaping here and redirect it back to where all the rest of the water was going. That was an expense we definitely were not planning on. And so just to go straight to that photo, that's what part of the perv pipe installation that we installed was looking like. You can also see over there, the house was looking kind of cool by then. We needed to put landscaping in here. We needed to put grass. We needed to do all those things, but nobody was going to buy $1 million home here when it was a muddy, muddy swamp in the front yard. So we needed to solve that. Sometimes you get to a point on these projects where you go, wow, we're just dumping money left and right. But you get to the point on these projects where you go like, okay, yes, we already know we're going to lose money. Yes, we already know we're probably not going to make much of anything at all. Yes, we've already got almost 2 years into this, but we have to sell it. We already own the house. So even though we have to spend more money on fixing the front yard, more money on the landscaping to make it look good, it is the only thing that's going to make the property really sell. So we have to spend the money. Sometimes you have to make those tough decisions. Okay, so the last thing I want to share with you guys on the mistakes on this property and things that came up. Last thing at all, and as I'm just beating a dead horse here. There's so many things that happen. But the last thing I'm going to share with you, and there's plenty more, trust me, is that I'm going to show you guys this. You can see here right now, this is a bunch of water. So a bunch of water, once again, water on this property. This is interior basement. So this is the basement of the property here. And you can see that there's water in the basement. Now, when we bought this house, we already owned it for, by this time, over a year. Water never got in this basement before. Why all of a sudden is water getting into it? Well, we had cut up the slab and cut up the concrete to install some new plumbing and so forth, and put the new bathroom in there. And we also, if you remember, the well was plugged from the old hand dug well, which created the hydrostatic that raised up the water that made it to where all of a sudden water was an issue on the property. So water was getting in this property from underground. It was coming up. And because we cut the concrete to put in plumbing, it gave a seam, a cold joint, what you would call it in concrete world. So that way water has a way to get up it from all the pressure underneath. The only way to solve that is to do something called an interior French drain. So this is a perimeter drain. So you can kind of see the dark area. We had to cut brand new sheetrock. So this is right after we installed this always happens. Right after you install brand new sheetrock in the Pacific Northwest, that's when the water comes. It never shows up before you install all your brand new sheetrock. It always shows up right after you install all your brand new sheetrock. So install the brand new sheetrock and voila, water appears magically. So we had to cut all the sheetrock out in the bottom portion of it. And this is, you can't tell from the just because of the bad pictures, but this is concrete, brand new poured concrete all around, because they put an interior French drain throughout all of it. This is in the bathroom. We had to go all the way here. This is wet concrete here. And they surround the entire tub because a lot of the water is coming up from underneath there from the concrete we cut there as well. So last big surprise for you guys on that one. Trust me, there was more. Despite all those challenges and everything I just went over with you guys with those things that messed up on the project, this property turned out beautiful. And we listed it for $950,000 and it sold for $950,000. Check this thing out. So it turned out gorgeous. This is not photoshopped grass. This is real grass that I went to. I lived down the street from this house. I went to all the time and made sure it was watered. We spent a lot of money on hoses, and they're all at my house right now. We went with a cedar shake on the outside, a stained cedar on the outside, and we did these hardy boards on the front. First time we used those, we thought it turned out gorgeous. I want to thank our teammate Serena for picking out all the finishes for that. The front door, that was an expensive front door. Look at where we walk in. The split level looks pretty nice. Those were powder coated railings that we had custom. This is part of the vaulted ceiling from the scissor trusses. Turned out super good. We put some skylights in there. And this is that 360 all the way around fireplace that used to look like a hunk of junk that we tiled all the way up to the top. Big, huge entertainment kitchen as well that came with the house after we remodeled it, of course. That vault, I'm so happy we put those scissor trusses in for after what it looks like afterwards. The house turned out gorgeous, which is why it sold for so much more than what we originally planned. Master bath, which I'll get to in a minute. There's a lot of photos here. This is the hall bath that what we didn't really touch. We just remodeled and cosmetically. In the master bedroom, we ended up putting this deck that wrapped around from the outside of the master all the way to the main area where the living room was. I love this master bath that Serena designed for us. We have a floating vanity. We tiled the entire area here all the way through it, put a skylight in the shower with dual shower heads. Super cool design for this used to be closet space, guys. That's how cool this was. Downstairs, normal stuff. There's that bathroom that was leaking from the French drains that I showed you. That same fireplace that went all the way to the bottom. And the big deck that we built off the back. Now, this is actually hog wire. This is kind of a cool thing. This is hog wire that we put in so you can see through it. So when you sit in the living room, you don't actually even see the hog wire. It's actually kind of cool. It's a cool optical thing. Now, we put these, what are they called? Laurels or whatever here. I think they're called laurels. Forgive me, landscapers, if that's the wrong word. We put the laurels here to kind of create a barrier from the wild wilderness of the property to a nice little backyard area to kind of separate it as best as we could, because we couldn't landscape everything on the property because it cost too much. It turned out nice. There's that septic that was, a major issue for a long time. the 2-car detached shop as well. And there's that well air house that was a major issue where the water used to be. Now, unbeknownst, there is a ton of perv pipe, drain pipe all throughout this whole thing to get what used to be a muddy swamp out to where it actually belongs, which is the little creek down the road. So the property turned out beautiful. There's that ADU that we turned just into empty office space, so people can use it as they want to from there. And I'm very proud of how the property turned out design-wise. We'd call this a portfolio house. We just won't talk about how much we made on it when we show it to people in the future. So what did I learn? Well, I learned a lot. I want to go over with you guys briefly a few of the key business lessons that I learned from this project and how it changed how we do our real estate investing now. First off, we used to have more staff. We used to do a lot more deals. We used to do a lot more projects, but we also had a lot more overhead. So this project was one of the final catalysts, one of the final straws that broke the camel back for me to realize I was doing so many deals at a time, so many big deals, yet I was not happy. I was stressed out. I was working all the time. I had so many projects, so many people accountable to me with that were dependent on us being successful. You got to feed the machine once you start developing a lot more people on your teams. I wanted to keep more deals for rentals. I wasn't building wealth. I was building income and I was building revenue for my business. This project made me realize, or one of the last things that really made me realize, like, man, I hate real estate. I hate doing most of this stuff. Why am I putting myself through this when I could have the same quality standard of life that I have today if I did less deals and just had less overhead and stopped trying to take on bigger projects and just did a certain amount of deals per year and redefined what we were best at. So this was the last project we ever took on of this scale. We did a couple more in between this one, but this was the last one we ever took on of this scale. And we said, what do we do best? We do best those mid-range rehabs that we can do the rough end stuff ourselves through hiring subs and then hire GCs for everything else. We do really great on making plans initially on projects. We do really good on our finished packet. And with a small team, if we just took a little bit more time on the planning phase on these projects and we can hire the right contractors, we don't need a project manager. The project will handle itself if we have the right plan in place. So it made us really spend a lot of time focusing on the planning of a project for everything going forward so we can spend less time on the actual project itself once the rehab goes underway. So that's another pro tip for you guys. Focus on the planning phase. If you spend more time on your planning phase on your business, on your projects, you'll spend less time on the actual rehab phase once it starts going on and you hire contractors. I have videos in the past that go over that in great detail. So we changed our business that way. We decided let's stick to a certain amount of projects. We said we'll never do more than 10 at a time going forward. We also said let's stick to a certain level of rehab. Let's not ever do a project more than $125,000 because anything over that for us, something always went wrong. So less than 125K if we can avoid it. And let's not do anything that involves major engineers and really high paid architects. So we can just do simpler in the box houses. Let's also not buy big ass projects that everywhere you dig, there's going to be a bunch of messed up debris and garbage and junk and everything you touch and is going to be messed up as well. Another thing it changed is that we spent a lot more time figuring out how do we analyze these deals to get as much details as possible on the front end before we buy it. Now, you guys have seen some of my past videos analyzing deals. You can see we have a ton of data on these properties before you buy them. A lot of that data, a lot of that process, a lot of that due diligence came from 2016, 2017, when I was doing projects like this and messing them up and learning the hard way. So do your due diligence on your projects as best as you can. Develop your systems to where you can do them as quickly as you can and get as much data as possible so you don't make the mistakes I did like I did on this project. We also learned that we hate micromanaging contractors. We learned that if we hire the right contractor that knew their stuff and paid them a little bit more, made the good contractor, then we didn't have to pay attention to them quite as much. Now, we as investors always want to save money where we can because that's how we make our profit and our margin. And I had learned that I had two contractors in particular that always took the most amount of time from us and created the biggest issues. And in this particular project, we had a lot of issues with our plumber and we had a lot of issues with our electrician. And if we would have just hired a little bit more expensive plumber and a little bit more expensive electrician, our job site would have been a little bit faster and have a lot less stress, a lot less redos. Another thing we learned as well is that when you tell a contractor specifically how to do their job and they say, okay, and then that thing gets re-inspected and it's done wrong, well, whose fault is it? It's on us. So this particular job, we hired a framer. We let our project manager coach that framer through everything instead of letting the framer do their job. So all the corrections that we had on our actual inspections had to get redone over and over again because our own project manager was coaching the framer to do it the wrong way. So we learned, stop telling contractors how to do their job. Why not we become the client and let the contractor do what they do best for their client, which we are. Now, there's a lot of stuff in there, a lot of rambling that are going on that maybe one day I'll do a video for you guys that breaks that stuff in a little bit more detail and a lot more focused content for you guys on that. So let's end with the final numbers on this project. So just to recap, we bought this property for $155,000. Some of these numbers are going to be kind of general for you guys, but we bought it for about $155,000 plus a little bit of closing costs. We had a bunch of property taxes in almost 2 years, so it's $19,400. We had insurance for a few $1,000. We had utilities for $4,000 or $5,000. We had rehab for $296,000 to complete this thing. We had finance charges up the butt for $103,350. And of course, our closing costs, $20,000 in closing costs, including excise tax, $57,000 in real estate commissions, netting us exactly negative $5,213 because we sold the property for $950,000. Thank God. All right, guys, we went over a ton on this property, and I am losing myself just because of this from this video. I really hope you like it. It was a long video. Forgive me for that. We went over a lot of details on here. There's a lot of nuggets I hope that you guys can get from this. Just remember, don't bite off more than you can chew. Know your capacity, your capabilities. Realize that you're actually putting out risk a lot more than just the money when you invest in real estate. You're putting out that opportunity cost, your mental health, your physical health, all the different things you could be doing with your time, especially when a deal goes wrong. Know why you do this business. Why are you in this business? Are you in it to work 100 hours a week and like I used to? Are you in it to live a lifestyle business like I do now, where I just put a few hours a week in, living in Maui, hanging out here instead? So why do you do this business? And design your business that way. Don't design it the way everybody else does it. Design it the way you want to do it. What's best for you? That's all that matters, you and your family. So if you like this video and you want more of it, please let us know. If you lasted the entire video, please let me know. Comment, like, subscribe to BiggerPockets. If you want to follow me on Instagram at Tarl Yarby, you can. We will definitely do more videos like this. The more you comment, the more we appreciate it, so we can know that you guys really want these videos. There's a lot of videos we could be doing, and we'll keep doing these analysis videos for you if you like them. So let me know. Follow me on Instagram. Follow BiggerPockets. Buy everything we got. For books wise, there's some great books coming out. Mr. Brandon Turner's got a good book coming out here soon, as well with Brian Murray, co-author for Multifamily Millionaire, coming up very, very soon. So check it out. And I'm Tarl Yarby once again. See you guys on the next Analyzing Deals Like a Pro.